Hey, this is Joel Ellis, a very hoarse Joel Ellis, after a lot of seawater and karaoke. But I'm here to let you know that the Nothing Shocking podcast is truly rocking, and I'm on it coming up. Listen to my show. We're going to talk about my bands, Cats and Boots, Heavy Bones, Mary Hoax, and all the other fun stuff in between and the new stuff to come. But listen to Jeff and Eric and rock on with Nothing Shocking. All right?
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Joel Ellis from Cats and Boots.
Heavy Bones.
He's got Ellis Island coming out.
Yep, and he's also got a 4-disc box set, kind of a retrospective of his work, soon to be released sometime this year. Great interview. I think he was down in Cancun when we interviewed him, correct?
Yeah.
Hey, well, let's get to this interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Joel, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Joel, this is going to be fun tonight.
Hey, guys, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So, hey, you are extremely busy right now, outside of being on vacation, but you're also working on new music and working on a documentary. Let's start with the music first. Can you give us a little down low of what's been going on with you on the music side of things?
Oh, it's been a lot. Over the years, the music industry slowed down, but so it's been a little difficult to get things out. But prior to that, there was a lot going on. So a lot of what I'm doing is kind of bringing a lot of things out, kind of cleaning out the closet. But I've got a lot of archives that I've had, a lot of home demos. The first project I'm working on right now is during all my days in Hollywood, I had a lot of I always had like a recording unit up in my apartment, and so all the demos and the songs that I worked on back in those days, I've just kind of kept them in the archives for a long time, and so and all the way up to just prior to the Heavy Bones record, and including a lot of the songs that did end up on the Heavy Bones record. But these are all the home recordings and the rehearsal recordings and demos that we did. I'm having a lot of it, just hours and hours of music and sorting through it. And so I'm the first project I'm doing is I've had all these tapes digitized, and out in Hollywood I had them all digitized, and they all came out great. They sound really, really clear. Yeah, so what I'm doing is this first compilation is I'm releasing it together with Warner Brothers. That so a lot of them that ended up or didn't end up on the record that got cut from the record. They're Heavy Bones, but it's a box set basically. So there's a lot of different stages of the songwriting phase that are going to become different volumes included in the box set. So I'm working on those, getting those mastered right now, getting them remixed, remastered, and they sound really incredible. I'm really shocked at the sound quality of what they are. But what people are going to hear in the box set is I'm splitting it up into four sets. So it'll be a lot of the recordings we did that have all the members of Heavy Bones playing on it. But in essence, it's really the only recording of the band that we have live, even though it's not an actual live performance. We're recording these songs live, so it's live performances with all the guys, Frankie and myself and Gary and Rex. And it's the way that we had originally produced the songs ourselves before we went to Warner Brothers and before we went into the studio to make the record. And the songs are the great various versions of them, but there's a lot of material, so I'm splitting it up into 4 volumes, and then the 4th disc in the set is the actual songs from the record that I'm putting them in a different song order that I want, and the label's licensing them for the project. So yeah, it's going to be a great project. I'm going to release them one disc at a time as I finish them, and eventually it'll be a box set. So
fantastic! Fantastic. Jeff, do you want to take the next one, or do you want me to take this one?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you a little bit about the recording of that album. What was the writing process like? Did you guys all bring in songs, or did you write the songs primarily?
The writing of the album?
Yeah.
It was. It became a slightly arduous process because in the beginning I was writing with a lot of different people. After Cats and Boots, I began coming up with songs with. I reached out to my guitarist Denny Hole and Denny Michaels from Mary Hoax, back from Mary Hoax, which was on Atlantic Records. And we initially started working together, and I was doing some work with Ohashi, even though there was a big communication gap there with us for a while right after Cats and Boots. We were both kind of taking a break, but there were some songs that we started working on that were going to make it to the next Cats and Boots record. So some of those songs are there. I'm not sure if they'll end up in this collection. But for the actual Heavy Bones, I eventually started working with Gary Ollie, and he lived right down the street from me, right there in the notorious Fuller Ave, Hollywood Hills place. That it was a very notorious place that ended up being a great party haunt for a lot of great guys. Stephen Piercy he moved in with me, even though he had a nice house in San Diego. He moved in with me because of the let's just say the atmosphere there.
Yeah.
And the schedule of events that were nightly, and it was a fun time, and I had a recording machine in the apartment. So there was always somebody working, recording this and that. Who else lived in the building there? Mitch Perry lived with us. Not lived with us, but he lived right down the hall. And Taney from Pastor Pritchett was there. Eddie Van Halen was always around. He would come by. I don't know. I don't think there was no recordings of Eddie, but Jason Bonham and just a lot of guys. Yeah. And so. Digging through these old tapes, I realized that, a lot of the writing process really started back before Gary and I started writing songs. It really started honing the direction. And, a lot of the songs on the Heavy Bones record ended up being acoustic. And the reason is because a lot of the time somebody, just grab an acoustic guitar and we'd start jamming the songs, grab a guitar laying around in the apartment. And so, the majority of the writing of those songs, it really started from that environment. You know, just a lot of different musicians hanging out and, you know, picking up the acoustic guitar and jamming on it. You know, when Gary came over, it was pretty much, you know, that was pretty much the methodology there for what we were doing. Gary would basically follow me around with an acoustic guitar and be like, Jesus, Joel, sit in one place, will you? And so, you know, he would just follow me around and play a riff until I said, you know, that sounds like a song. You know, let's build off of that. You know, play it and change it and let's go from there. So pretty much that's how the writing took place. It was initially the Heavy Bones was an offer from Warner Brothers to me to Michael Austin, who was vice president of Warner Brothers at the time. And so he offered me a solo deal recording. And then that eventually was a deal that I shared with the rest of the band. And so we, you know, it was during the days when, you know, Eddie Van Halen was always constantly, all I ever heard from him was talking about LSD, you know, lead singer disease. And so I figured, you know, I don't want to be one of these guys, you know. David Ross is getting it pretty hard.
Absolutely. Are you there?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you. I was going to hang up on you and call you back.
Oh, geez, that's crazy, man. I don't know what's going on.
It's Mexico. It's Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the middle of the Caribbean.
Yeah. All right, so I want to bring this back to the box set. I guess this is like maybe a two-part question here. When you're talking about releasing a compilation of songs to this magnitude, how massive of a job is it to get these things remastered and sounding good? And, you know, I guess when it comes to digging through the archives of all this stuff, where do you say, okay, this song's good enough, this song's not good enough? How did it work for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You know, I had these tapes. Literally, I don't know if anybody back in the day who was, you know, recording, if you remember the old Tascam 388 machines. Most of the music that's going on this, are you talking about this box set, the songs under this box set, or you mean eventually the record itself?
No, the actual box set that you have coming out.
Okay, great, yeah. Yeah, so they were, the old Tascam 388 was an 8-track machine. It literally had 8 line strips, which is beautiful, man. It had, you know, a line strip is basically the fader with all the different, you know, knobs on it that control the tone and everything else. The dynamics. But, so it was pretty advanced. You know, before that, everybody has these little, you know, Tascam 4-track machines or this or that. So these tapes laid around for years. I didn't even know if they were any good. But I was very fortunate. I decided one day as I was looking through them, as I was making a move, I found this box in my attic, and I just said, you know, I really want to go ahead and just kind of see what's on these tapes. And so as I went through the tapes, I realized that this is pretty valuable stuff. There's a really amazing amount of songs and some really good, really great songs. And I was always, you know, disappointed that they didn't make the record. I mean, we had 13 songs as it was. But, you know, so I called Garth Richardson, an engineer, that producer, and Garth and I have been friends for years, and he said, contact a friend of mine named Dan Johnson, who's a great engineer. But Dan was staff engineer at Ocean Way Studios, one of the bigger, more prominent studios in Los Angeles for years. And when everything changed from analog to digital, Dan was the one that was given the task of trying to figure out how to get your analog tapes over to digital. And so he developed the process. So now Dan has his own business where that's what he does. He digitizes tapes, and everybody and their mother who you can think of in the music industry is over there giving him their old tapes before they disintegrate. And he does music and film industry tapes. But you know, so I contacted him when we started talking, and it turns out, you know, we had a lot in common and common friends. But he's like, I'm booked up for like months. He goes, but you know what? This sounds like a really good project. He said, Joe, I'll make time. He goes, I'll squeeze time. He goes, right now I'm doing all of Kiss's catalog, all the master tapes. And so I went down there and to his place, and I rolled in a giant cart full of tapes. It was like giant shopping cart. It was just loaded full of 2-inch tapes, masters, things that I had done in the Tascam, the 1/4-inch tapes. But anyways, the process is that, he developed where you actually bake the tapes until they're pliable enough to play them. And you might get 2 or 3 runs at it until the tape falls apart. And in that period of time, you have to try to capture it and get it as well best you can into digital. So I had that done. And fortunately, all the tapes were in amazing shape. He said they were good. The transfer was perfect. There's no gaps, no sound loss quality, nothing. And in fact, the 2-inch master tapes that I did on my solo record for A&M, he said just came out just amazing sound. So that's how we got, the files over to digital. And don't ask me anything about Pro Tools or anything, because I am a techno dork, and I choose to remain that way, because for me, I feel like working in a digital world on computers, and I just think it just completely robs you. You're working with 2 different sides of your brain. So I am not a left side. I am not a left brain guy. So I just let someone else, don't fight a fight someone else can fight better for you. So I'm working with a great engineer. I recently moved back to Cleveland, Ohio, and I love it. I'm just kind of had it with the West Coast for enough for one lifetime. But I moved back to my roots in Cleveland, Ohio, the rock and roll capital of the world, and I found a nice studio there. Found a great engineer, Mike Jaworski, and he's got a great studio at the Funk Studios. And he's one of these guys that is a Pro Tools magician, the Wizard of Oz. These guys that can mix on the fly and record at the same time. But and he starts going through all the different plugins, and I'm amazed, man, because they're making plugins now, these little tiny apps that open in the computer for thing, and you can emulate. We got a Pultec compressor that they used on the Beatles Abbey Road records. so that's what we're using on it. I hope that explains. I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeff, you got the next one?
It's you've kind of alluded to your solo record a couple of times. Is that the one that you're going to title Ellis Island?
Yep, Ellis Island.
I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that project.
Ellis Island is really interesting. During Heavy Bones was a very long, arduous process. It really became a lot of overkill, and I think it was mainly due to the type of management we had. It's easy for a manager to sit back and continuously take 20% of the money that the label doles out, and so it just only makes sense that you keep a band locked up in a pre-production studio rehearsing their asses off for 8 months. But during that period of time, the band relationship with the bandmates kind of grew sour, and I kind of drifted away. And I started spending a lot of time with Bobby Womack. I don't know if a lot of people know who Bobby is, but if you don't, I highly recommend you look into Bobby's history as an artist and as a patron saint to music, period. But Bobby wrote the first song that allowed the Rolling Stones to break through the giant wall of Beatles back in the day. So he's really he is a patron saint for at least the Rolling Stones. And in the back of the Chitlin Circuit bus, he showed Jimi Hendrix how to flip his right-handed guitar over and play it left-handed by inverting the chords on his hand, because they didn't make left-handed guitars for that. And Jimmy was left-handed and Bobby was left-handed. So that's the way they learned. But those are just a couple of things. So I was spending a lot of time with Bobby, and he introduced me to the Rolling Stones, and those guys really, they helped pull me through, a phase of my life where I was really in a rut with Heavy Bones. We were in that like bad management, band greed, gridlock, and all I wanted to do was just make a record. I made a big mistake sharing my contract, and I got locked into it. I should have just kept, kept the solo contract that Michael Austin was offering me. So in the meantime, while Heavy Bones was basically falling apart, I was actually delving into a deeper side of music with Bobby. And Bobby and I were spending a lot of time together in the recording studio and in and out. We basically lived next door to each other. I lived, Denise Richards Vanity was my next door neighbor, so she was my sweetheart and lived next door. And Bobby lived a few doors down. And it was just that kind of thing. We all had penthouse apartments in this place in Sherman Oaks, right on Ventura Boulevard, and it was great. So most of the my development towards Ellis Island was influenced with Bobby while he was writing the Resurrection record, and it was a record that he was making. He wanted to make a comeback, so I think it's safe to say that Bobby and I were very close best friends. And he's also from Cleveland, Ohio. We grew up not too far from each other, just decades apart. He's much older than me, but he used to say to me, he goes, "Joe, we just two Pisces from Cleveland." We'd be out somewhere, and somebody would recognize him or recognize me or whatever, and so after all the smoke cleared, it would be like, "We just two Pisces from Cleveland." We'd be on our way, and so Bobby was really, really very instrumental in influencing me in my direction. I had very deep conversations with Keith Richards about songwriting and just about letting the feelings become the music. And Keith is a genius and one of the nicest people ever. And Ronnie Wood, the same. Keith and Ronnie Wood and Bobby Womack really inspired me allowed me to bring a lot of my R&B influence. I mean, growing up in Cleveland as a kid. Now, I mean, there's a reason why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there, is because it was not only the greatest city, through the greatest era of rock and roll, but it was also a great melting pot for R&B, soul. Motown was 4-hour drive down the road, and Cleveland's definitely a soul city, just like Detroit or New York. And so. All those things are being brought up out of me by these guys, and I was spending time in the studio, and I would actually be in the vocal booth with Bobby Womack while he was singing his vocals, and then I had guys like Jimmy Zolo, who was a great guitarist, and he recorded with me on the solo record, and Jam from Cats and Boots came around, and we started to make amends and write songs, and I told him, he said, "Yeah, I'm not really into the heavy thing. I really want to be able to, bring all this out of me. That is my influences. My influences, a lot of it was R&B and soul and Motown and all kind of things, funk. And so, so what eventually evolved was a lot of songs that, again, in this other apartment, a lot of guys coming over and writing. And Bobby's influence, saying, well, let's take this song that way, or why don't you sing with me on this song on my record? And hey, you know what, you should try that style on that one. Or if I had a song idea, he would sing it. I'd hear him sing it. I'd be like, wow, it sounds like a totally different song. I'd have a song idea, like I woke up dazed and alone, and he'd be like, I woke up dazed and alone. I'd be like, oh, okay, I see where this is going, man. Mm-hmm. And so he literally kind of produced these songs with me from the writing phase, and he came into the studio, and so there's a large influence from the Rolling Stones and Bobby Womack in my personal direction on the record. And the story of the making of the Ellis Island record was pretty amazing. I was very close to the Zappa family. Frank and Dweezil was still a good friend of mine. And he was telling me about this room, but one day I'm at the Rainbow, and a guy named Michael Mom came in, and he says, hey, I just bought this room. It's in the basement of an apartment building near the corner of Highland and Sunset, where Jimi Hendrix used to live, before he went to New York. And so in the basement of the building, he talked the owner of the apartment building into letting them put a studio in the basement for him to mess around with. Mm-hmm. So it was like, a boiler room or a storage room. Well, Jimmy used it. And then when Jimmy left, Frank told me, like, oh, they took that over. When Jimmy went to New York, Frank made the record Hot Rats down there. That's where he made my favorite Zappa song, Peaches on Regalia. Mm. He made Hot Rats in that room. And then the stories I heard about that room with Janis Joplin being in there with Big Brother, and Jim Morrison would go in there and he would sit in there and just get hammered and read poetry. And I heard the Grateful Dead did stuff in there, and it was just a room for people to go to. It was like a hideaway. It was like a little underground spot. So Michael Mann bought it, and right after he bought it, he put in an automated board, and he was in the Rainbow one night, and he was just like, Joe, I'd really love to have you come test out the room and record. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, hell yeah. So I pulled out a bunch of cash and gave it to him and went in there, and I made a few phone calls, and I said, hey, let's go lock ourselves in this room and just see, and the intention of it was just to get a bunch of great guys together and see how the room recorded. And but it turned out to be something a whole lot more because of the people I had involved. I had on bass, I had Phil Chen, bless his heart. He's rest in peace. But Phil Chen, he played with Jeff Beck. He's the bassist on the Blow by Blow record. Mm-hmm. And he also played with Rod Stewart. He wrote If You Think I'm Sexy. And he's just a phenomenal guy, a little Chinaman little Chinese guy from Jamaica. Grew up in Jamaica, but real interesting guy. But Phil was just phenomenal. And writing a song was just effortless, with these guys. And Larry Aberman was a drummer. He plays on the Vaughan Brothers Double Trouble record. And Larry came in and just added a magic to the record. And then, he's such a musical drummer, such a dynamic musical drummer. And together with Phil Chen, it was just like you just couldn't miss it. It was just such an eclectic, flow of consciousness that just turned out to be the music. I had Takashi Ohashi, or Jam from Cats and Boots. Mm-hmm. He came in, and Jam's guitar playing he's probably, I think he's one of the most self-imposed, underrated guitarists ever. He really is a genius guitarist. You don't think about people that have that organic artistic genius when you think of Japanese people. You just kind of think about, they're great musicians. There's a difference between a musician and an artist, according to like what David Bowie says. But Jam is. He's a deep artist. He used to always tell me I don't like Jimmy Page. He's sloppy, But I'm like, dude, sorry to tell you, but you got a lot of Jimmy Page quality in your playing. Some of the things he does. I don't like acoustic guitar. It's not rock and roll. You're a pretty fucking great acoustic guitar player. So I miss Jam. I miss working with him. We really are kindred spirits. But we worked together on that record, and I said, this is my record, so I want you to really kind of pull out the psychedelic stuff and let's just let it flow. And so he came up with some great riffs, and he's an actual songwriter. It was a lot different. I took a lot for granted working, after coming out of Cats and Boots, going from working with Ohashi to working with Gary Hilly, because Gary Hilly's much more of a mechanical musician as opposed to an artist, Jam could drop his guitar on the ground and come up with something that you want to record, that touches your soul. But Gary's a very, music theory. He was a guitar teacher before Heavy Bones, so there's a big difference there. So I really missed that in Heavy Bones, by the way. But so we got Ohashi in there, and I said, okay, look, we're flipping off the Ohashi opinion machine, and we're just going to stick you in the corner and let you do whatever it is you do. And then Jimmy Zola came in, and Jimmy Zola is a very eclectic guitarist too. He's he doesn't probably have a lot to reference it from, but Jimmy plays on that record, and I hope to have him in my new band. But Jimmy's really into all the old vintage stuff. In fact, he even played a 59 Strat and an old Gibson ES335 with a tweed amp, and everything was vintage. So the combination of those two, and they hated each other, by the way, like most guitar players do, mostly guitar players. Well, Jam hates any other guitar player. It's like my guitarist Denny from Mary Ho's, he came out on stage with us during a Cats and Boots show at the Palace Theater in Hollywood. Jam came over and kicked him in the ass and kicked him off the fucking stage, man. And it's funny as hell, but these guys are very entertaining, with their egos, but it's really great. But yeah, he's definitely a very territorial guy when it comes down to it. So it was interesting because they were both playing on my record, and they both had to be there to work for the music, to actually play for the music. And who else did I have there? Hasim Jeffries was an amazing guy from India. He played a 6-string fretless bass. He does some really beautiful, spooky bass parts in it. And I had a couple of great sax players, Spider Middleman, who played with Chucky Weiss and the Goddamn Liars, and very like a Tom Waits. And in fact, I think he did some work with Tom Waits. But the other sax player was on a complete other spectrum. He brought a really different vibe to the record. His name is George Shelby, who played with Anita Baker and Sting. And so he was a very clean, concise player. But both guys just they're so great. He'd come in on time, and he'd be there, and he'd play certain licks that were like, Jesus, those are all keepers. Spider would show up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and wearing his pajamas, and he'd pull his giant baritone sax out of an old beat up case and reach down in the horn of the sax and pull out a big bag of weed and roll a few fatties, and crack jokes for a couple hours until we were like just all like melted butter, ready to go. And then he would just puff out a couple of just beautiful, dark, raspy sax tones that we would just do cool stuff with. Put a delay on it and just let it. He was such an artist, and behind all of it, we had an engineer named Barry Sanders, and Barry, another real unsung hero. This guy was an engineer for the Moody Blues. And we were working on one of the very first automated mix machines that I had ever seen. It wasn't digital yet. It was analog, but it was automated, kind of like the old SSL, solid state logic boards. But it wasn't, I don't remember who it was made by. But so that was us. We were all there. We locked ourselves in this Jimi Hendrix's little studio, and, with the new board and with Barry Sanders and with all these great musicians, and we had no songs prior written. We had a couple of ideas that we went in with, but once we all got in there, in fact, there's a song on the record called "A Child in Time," and it was written basically off of Phil Chen just tuning up his bass and Larry Haberman tuning up his drum heads, and they just started playing. I don't know who started first, whether it was Phil or Larry, but just started playing this riff, and it just became this really sultry, sexy little groove of I don't even know what you want to call it. It's not a ballad. It's just I don't know. It's just a very cool song, about. And then just we drop in a couple of sax lines here and there. And there's a real great story about a child inside. Not a child in time. It's the child inside. And I just started singing like, in these days, time. And we're just talking about how I'm walking down the street and looking around at how society is like losing its mind, and I'm just in touch with the grass growing under my feet. Just a simple song. Yeah. And but there was a big door with a storage room in the room, and the door had a lock on it that hadn't been opened yet for a long time. They never even. Michael said he looked in it and he saw a bunch of junk in there and music stuff, and he planned on cleaning it out eventually. So, of course, we were just like, well, let's open it. And so we opened it up, and in the back of the room was this old piano, and it had all this psychedelic stuff on it. Paintings, T-shirts tacked to it or whatever, I don't know, but it was old, it was beat up, and it was Janis Joplin's. And, or I should say Big Brothers. And So we pulled it out, we cleared all this junk out of the room, and we dragged this old upright, it was an upright piano, and it weighed 1 million pounds. It had that big, giant cast iron steel back to it. But the plate was warped. And so nothing was in tune. I mean, the piano was foobarred, man. It was like basically everything. It was just completely foobarred. So I said, wait a minute, we have to use this piano on the recording somehow. Let's use it, make a weird sound with it and record it or do something. You can't just find Janice's piano and leave it.
Yeah.
So I knew a guy. There's a guy in Hollywood, brilliant, very good friend, and he has perfect. When I say perfect, every engineer in the business, or every producer in the business will back me up on this. Michael Lord is his name. Just a great guy. Just long, straight, blonde hair down to his ass, and perfect pitch ears, and super, super nice guy. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, can you help me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll come down." And after looking at the piano, he's like, "Are you serious? Come on, there's nothing you can do with it. You just want to drop it down the steps and record it." But so I said, "Well, come on, we got to figure out. There's got to be something you can do." He goes, "Well," he goes, "Yeah." He goes, Barry goes, "Well, wait a minute." He goes, "Can you, with your perfect pitch, can you tell me what notes are in tune with middle C, and then what if I VSO the tape down, which basically means variable speed, and what if I slow it down to match, C, middle C on the tape? I'll match the tone exactly to the tone of middle C on the piano." And then, so before Michael could say yes, I was standing there with a roll of masking tape and a Sharp. So we did that. We VSO'd the tape down. We matched the tone to middle C, and Michael took the roll of masking tape and the Sharpie, and with his ears, he sat there for hours, and he put a piece of tape and put an X down on every little note that did match it. So, there might have been maybe 14 keys that matched, that were in tune with each other. And so then he had the difficult process of actually playing something. Just play some falling piano notes and chords. But you're playing that, you slowed the music down, so it's like, so, who knew if it was going to come out sounding anything, audible. But Bobby Womack was there with us, and I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know this. Bobby was very close to Janis Joplin, and in fact, on her last record, Pearl, her and Bobby recorded a song called "Trust Me" that I'm going to be doing a cover version of. But it's just Bobby and Janis, and Bobby was with Janis the whole night, the night before she died. So he was basically up partying with her and drinking and doing whatever. And then she was like, "I'm going to go home." And then he goes, "Yeah," and I heard, and then the next thing I know, I heard she went home and booted up and died. So Bobby was very close to her. And so when we played, we VSO'd it back up. The piano matched the song, and it was unmistakably her piano. And he was in the room, and he heard it, and on his arms just lit up in goosebumps. And he goes, "Joe, I got to get out of here. The girl is in the room."
That's awesome. Very cool.
So anyway, the record is full of those kind of things. One more quick story about the record that's something that people need to know is that, again, a lot of the songs are written from people tuning their instruments and of someone else getting inspired. So there was the guys that created Manley mics. They were brand new, and they were just starting out, and they made this giant. Looked like a semi-truck, hanging in the room. But it was this giant microphone, and they brought it in for me to test out. Well, this was about 3 or 4 in the morning. Barry's behind the soundboard. I'm testing out this new mic that sounds amazing. And Jimmy Zolo's got his 59 Strat, the same guitar that Stevie Ray Vaughan and Buddy Holly died playing, the haunted 59. He's over there in the corner trying to, he's getting the intonation on it, and he's playing this riff, this dong, 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 ding. And so anyways, I Jimmy, keep playing that. Barry, hit record. And out of nowhere, I mean, I don't believe we wrote this song. I think we found it. We had our antennas up. But out of nowhere came these lyrics, and he was just kind of playing these notes behind the words as they were coming out of my mouth. So there's no real meter to the song, but it's just me and his 59 Strat. And then we listen back, and he says, wait a minute. He goes, I can get a really cool, spooky slide feedback. So he does that with his ES-335, two of the most vintage guitars, at 4 in the morning, 4 a.m. TM, at 4 in the morning. And it turns out the lyrics all came down. Everything was one take. And it turned the song, when you listen to the lyrics, it turned out to be the angel that takes children to heaven. And the song is called Lily. It's Not Over, because I start singing to this little girl named Lily. And, she's sitting in a field of daisies. And, a soldier comes out of the forest and, off the front line, and she hands him a daisy chain, and he lays his gun down, and the lyric of the song is, hey, little Lily, what have they done? You handed them daisies, and they gave you guns. And the chorus is, take my hand, it's not over, and he takes the kids to heaven. It's some really, really great moments on that record, and it's been sitting for years. The original masters it was to be released on A&M Records. Shelly Yakis heard what I did over at TTG, and he said, this is brilliant. I really want to release it on A&M Records. Right about that time, we went in, we started mixing at A&M, and then I found out my father was dying of cancer, so I put the record on hold to go be with my family. And during that time, Jimmy Iovine decided to buy up every up-and-coming master tape that was coming out so that he could create a hole in the industry, a giant vacuum for his rap artists, and flood the market with it. So Shelly calls me, and he's like, you better come get your tapes because, Jimmy's buying everything up. And so I got the tapes. He shipped them to me in Cleveland where I was at, taking care of my dad, helping me take care of my dad. And so the record's set. It's just kind of been in the closet, hanging out. And so I decided to take that. So Dan Johnson, when I had him digitized it, and he said the sound quality is just beautiful because we used, 499 tape, which is a very thick 2-inch tape. And he said you took great care of storing the tapes, and there's a lot of sound depth to it. And that we experimented with, tape saturation as opposed to recording the distortion at the amp level. We just did a lot of great experimenting with that tape. And so I don't have a release date, but what I plan to do is right now where I'm at with timing is that I've finished up disc 1, and it's been a long year for me. So I said I needed a couple of weeks in the Caribbean to take a break, and so that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm down in Cancun, one of your favorite places, Eric.
Yep.
Right? Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's magic down here.
All right, so we're running out of time, but I got one more question for you, and then we're going to let you go, okay?
Okay, yeah, I can go ahead and give you that release date information, though.
Yeah, for sure. Later this year, you're going to be releasing your anthology. This anthology will include your favorite recordings from the 80s to the present time. When can we be expecting this anthology to be released? Do you have a release date for the anthology?
Yeah, so it seems like we're probably running out of a little time here, so I'll try and make it a little quick. All right, well, like I said, I finished up disc 1 out of 4. There's 4 volumes. Just volume 1 is what I just finished, which are the 2-track masters for the Warner Brothers box set. I've got 2 more discs to do, and then the fourth volume is going to be coming from the label, and then I'm going to remaster that. So that should be done. I expect to have that completed in the next month or so. Then I'm going to go into actually do the mix. I'll be doing the mix either in New York or LA for the Ellis Island record. That's going to be coming out on a limited edition collector's vinyl because of the people who play on it and just the quality of it. It's a very rare record, so that's going to be done. So depending on how long it takes me to get that mix done, that'll be the next record. And then after that, I've got a collection of don't jump to conclusions here. I'm not going country, but we made a record that started off called Ellis and Angel. It was with my son Joey, but we worked with some great guys like Don Peake and a lot of guys from Bonnie Raitt's band, etc. And so I'm going to complete that. I'm going to Nashville to make a new record, and got some amazing songs that I wrote during the time that I've been out of music after my father died. I didn't go back into music for a long time for several reasons. And a lot of the songs that I had written with the same guys that I write songs with. So we've got this collection of songs. There's probably 20 or 30, and we're just going to pick the best songs. And we're going into Nashville, and we're going to make a record. I haven't picked a studio. I haven't picked the bandmate. I'm going to be looking for some great musicians to play on that. And then after that, if time still permits this year, I'm going to do the anthology. I've always wanted to do the anthology, and since my intentions now are just going forward, it's just to be a solo artist. I just want to be Joel Ellis, the artist. And that's the reason why the name Ellis Island is, because as a solo artist, I still don't want to be labeled with the LSD, lead singer disease. So it's an island. When I go in to make a record, anybody who comes to play on a song or two songs or it's a whole album, they're coming to the island, and it's the Ellis Island. And so I expect to finish up just depending on what it takes in Nashville. I may do the anthology record. If it looks like it's going to be a big process making the record out in Nashville, then I'll probably just go forward and default on the anthology record, which will include all of my favorite songs, starting from our recordings with Atlantic Records, Mary Hoax back in '86, '87. To some favorites of Cats and Boots, maybe some unreleased stuff, and then my favorite songs from the Heavy Bones era, and then some of the more recent stuff. Nothing new. It's just going to be an anthology of all my favorite songs.
Nice. And
so those are the four projects I have in the works, and then I plan to get back to the stage because. I'm kind of right physically at the stage. I mean, let's face it, we're all getting older, but, I still, people still recognize me as that guy, so my hair is long. I'm in great physical shape, and my voice is in great shape. Sounds like shit now, though, because I've been been swallowing a lot of seawater and a couple of nights of karaoke and, partying with my friends from Venezuela. So yeah, I'm a little hoarse right now, but, But yeah, right. I hope I answered all your questions, guys.
Oh yeah, that's been great.
All right, man. I will be in touch with you tomorrow. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, man. Have a good
wonderful.
night. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, no, thank you. You guys are great.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. They roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.